You can hear the voice again, I think. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, it looks like I'm recording. So I'll go first real quick with my introduction and answer to the icebreaker. I'm Marco. I'm from Canada. I live in the GTA area. Recently I've relocated, but I'm still somewhat close to the GTA. I work in social work, and also the Contrarians is something that I do. My favorite opener for a concert that I've seen, just off the top of my head, I saw King Gizzard in 2019. I think that was the last show that I saw before the pandemic. And they had a really cool opener that I never even heard of. And I think the name of the band was Orb. And it turned me on to a really cool band that I never even heard of before that I thought was almost Black Sabbath-esque. They were kind of doomy and heavy. So I dug that. And we'll start with Todd. Do you want to give us an introduction and tell us who you are and what your favorite opener for a concert was?
Hi, my name is Todd Evans, and I live in Ackworth, Georgia, a distant suburb of Atlanta. And I work in sales operations at a television network. And my choice for best opener at a concert was in 1980, either 81 or 82. I think it was 82. I saw Genesis for the first time. And they opened up with Dodo Lurker, which is the first song on side 2 of Abcab. And not necessarily my favorite Genesis song, but it just hit me with that's the loudest I've ever heard keyboards in my life. And on that particular tour, Tony Banks was actually placed in the middle of the stage between the two drummers and higher up, like he's God or something. And he just hit the opening chords of that song. And I was just like, wow, I've never seen a concert where I could hear the keyboards at all, let alone that loud. So that made a real impression on me. And so that's my choice.
Nice. Just to clarify, I meant like opening band for a concert that you've seen. Do you have like a cool opening band that you saw?
Oh,
what was
gosh.
Your favorite opening band?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I actually don't. I'll raise my hand if I come up with one.
All right, cool. Why don't we head over to Andrew next? You're next on my list there.
All right. Yeah, Andrew Meyer, a medical director in suburban Philly. Love being on this in this group. This is kind of I really have only come to hard rock and metal, particularly metal, in the last couple of years, so it's really fresh for me. In terms of opening bands, gosh, I hate to sound lame. I've been to like 10 concerts ever, and I never go to the opening acts, or I go to the bathroom or something. So I don't really have a good answer for you. But yeah, next time, Mark, I'll get you a good one. Don't worry.
Good to see you again.
Good
Nick
to see you.
Esquire. Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks, Marco. Sorry about that. My name's Nick. I live in Pennsylvania, about an hour west of Philadelphia. Profession is cheekily embedded in my pseudonym. Best opening act. Going through the metal Rolodex, thinking of a lot off the top of my head, but one that just jumped out at me, I was already a fan, but in around 1988-ish, King's X opened for Billy Squier. And, King's X is fantastic. Saw them many times headlining, but on that tour, they were opener.
Nice. Reed Little, first time here.
Yeah, nice to meet everybody. I'm Reed. I'm from the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. I'm actually retired. I'm a part-time college professor. The school has asked us not to use their name when we're doing online activities. And for a while, I also had a small YouTube channel, which I've discontinued because I have some chronic health issues. I did guitar pedal and guitar building projects, but that's kind of fallen by the wayside. My favorite concert opener, I'm going to say Alice in Chains opening for Ozzy Osbourne on the No More Tours tour, because this was before Dirt really broke. Facelift was their only album out. Dirt wasn't out yet. And the crowd hated them. They got nothing but boos, and people were throwing stuff at the stage. And Alice in Chains, I've never seen a band that combative. They did not back down. They just middle finger in the air and kept playing, and they were fantastic.
Very cool.
Neat. Nice.
Grant Arthur.
Hey, yeah, my name's Grant Arthur. I'm from Delaware, Ohio, so it's Central Ohio. I'm an LMS administrator with Ohio Health. I've got a couple of concerts, but I think the best opening act, there were two opening acts for this show. I was like a kid, 13. It was Sammy Hagar was on the Street Machine tour. The tickets were $5 a piece. The opening act, first opening act was April Wine, and they were on Harder Faster tour. And then the Scorpions were on Animal Magnet. No, Love Drive. Was it Love Drive? I guess 79. What would that be? I don't know. But anyway,
The Animal
April
Mag-
Wine.
yeah.
Yeah. So April Wine, the Scorpions, and Sammy Hagar for $5. It was incredible. I still remember that concert today.
Very cool. Matt.
Probably was Love Drive, actually,
Oh,
come to
sorry.
think of it.
Was
Yeah.
it Love Drive?
Yeah, I would think
Yeah.
so. Yeah. Cool.
Matt, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Matt Thompson. I'm in Cary, North Carolina in the US, and I work in legal technology software. Two opening bands came to mind. So one was Pantera opening for Suicidal Tendencies, and the other was Faith No More opening for Soundgarden, opening for Voivod. And both of them were examples where neither band had like really broke yet. It was kind of right before, but had a lot of high energy, and you could tell something was happening with both bands.
Nice. Tim from Tim's Vinyl Confessions.
Yeah, thanks, Marco. Yeah, my name's Tim Durling. I'm from Eastern Canada, and I have, as Marco said, a YouTube channel called Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I post a video every week. Invite everybody to check it out. As a matter of fact, two of our esteemed co-hosts here have been on, Marco and Martin. As a matter of fact, my latest episode just played this morning. It's Martin and I talk about Max Webster, and it's just a music discussion. I go through the stuff that I like, and I work in radio, and always look forward to these discussions. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Cool. Who's your favorite opening band?
So I think 3 years ago, my wife and I went to see, there's a handful of groups that my wife and I can agree on to go see. So this was a lot of fun. The headliner was Foreigner. Whitesnake was like a special guest. And the opener for the entire show was Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Experience. So it was Jason Bonham and a really, really great, band of guys doing like 45, 15-minute set of Zeppelin covers. But there was that added authenticity because you got Jason there. So that was a lot of fun.
Nice. Very cool.
Cool.
Laura Imac.
Oh, hey, my name is Howard. Howard Herrick. Hey, guys.
Hey, Howard.
I'm a music producer and a songwriter, and I have a new album out called Frantic Vibe. It's like prog, hard rock, metal.
Cool.
Anyway, been in the industry a long time, and I'm sitting here racking my brain. What's my favorite opera I've ever? It's so hard for me, but in my mind, I saw Great White before they became like Great White big, and they opened up, and I can't remember who in the 80s, but I think it was Judas Priest in about 83 in Syracuse, and they blew my mind. Unfortunately, their catalog didn't blow my mind, but that show did. So, hey, it's all good to see y'all. Can't wait for this. This is going to be a great show, man.
Cool. Thanks for coming.
Nice.
Joe, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Joe Becht. I know Martin. And
Absolutely.
that's a big fan of the Contrarians. My first time. So, hello, everybody. I work in logistics. I live in the Chicago area. Favorite opener. I've been to hundreds of shows, so it's a toss-up between two. I'm gonna have to go with Plasmatics when they opened up for the Creatures of the Night tour.
Cool.
Because it was such an adventure getting to the show. We had to drive 2 hours in the snow to get to it. And the Plasmatics had just gone from punk to metal. It was after it was during the Coup d'etat tour and after their Metal Priestess EP. Just a great friggin' show. Second place would be Def Leppard opening up for Ozzy on the High and Dry. But great to be here, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thanks for coming, Joe.
Nice.
Brett, you're up next. You have some cool figures behind you too.
Oh yeah, thanks. Wrestling, and then I got my whole Bill and Ted display right over here.
Nice.
I'm happy to finally be able to join one of these things. I missed the last two, so it's really cool to finally be here. My name's Brett. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I'm an operations manager for a logistics company, and I've been trying to think. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of concerts, but I would say the strongest opener I ever saw was probably, I saw Halford open up for Iron Maiden. It was Halford, Queensryche, and Iron Maiden on the Brave New World tour, right when Bruce came back, and at Madison Square Garden, August 5th, 2000. I don't know why I remember that. I can't remember my mom's birthday, but I can remember that. Halford was touring for his first solo album, Resurrection, and he opened up with that opening track, where he just comes in with Resurrection. It just gets higher and higher and more aggressive. That was a really cool opener. I'd probably say it's probably the best one for me.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, Brett.
Thank you.
Joshua.
Yeah, hello everyone. This is my first time. I'm from Germany, and yeah, it's actually midnight right now, and I'm really glad I could catch this. And sorry for my accent. As a German, you don't realize how bad your accent is until you talk to Americans. So yeah. So I study literature, culture, and media, and I work at a grocery store, and I work at a tennis court. So it's a whole yeah. And I'm a big music geek, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And but I have to admit, I have seen up to this point in my life like a handful of concerts, unfortunately, and I never caught an opening gig. I definitely tried to change that after COVID leaves us once and for all.
Yes.
Absolutely. Sorry for making you stay up so late.
Yeah.
No,
Thanks for
don't
joining
worry.
us.
Yeah,
wicked.
no,
Yeah.
I'm glad. At first, I thought it was a Saturday. I got my time zones totally mixed up, but I was really happy to see that it was just now. So, yeah, I'm just glad to be here. Yeah.
Thanks
You're
for
very
coming.
easy to understand for me. I'll just to make you feel better. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Jamie.
Hey, Jamie Laszlo. I live in Columbus, Ohio, real close to Grant there. I just looked it up, 40 minutes away. And I do accounts payable, which is really boring and not worth talking about. And my favorite opener was actually my favorite artist of all time. I was living in Sterling, Virginia in 1990, I think this was 96. And I was new to the area, and Steve Miller was coming to the big amphitheater, and Pat Benatar was opening. And this is before GPS. So I kept saying, I'm not going to find this amphitheater. I'll never find my way home. And the day of the concert, someone at my job said, here, I'll just write a map for you. And I followed the map, got there, got a ticket right there at the ticket booth. And I'll never forget, I said, I just want one ticket to this show. I'll sit on the grass, whatever. And she said, we have one ticket in front row center. How's that sound? That ticket just must have been sitting there for months, because no one goes to the shows by themselves but me. And first time I was ever front row center, saw Pat Benatar, and I'm waiting for Steve Miller, and I'm not a big fan. I mean, I'm sick of every hit he has. I'm sitting there thinking, Tino's has 50-cent drafts tonight. I'm out of there. And the biggest Steve Miller fan in the world was probably sitting on the grass behind me, and I left front row center. I kind of feel bad for that person I don't know.
Sorry, I have to interject. Probably the one thing I've only ever been front row center for was I saw Paul Stanley in the Phantom of the Opera in Toronto in like 1999. And I was front row center, and I had my Kiss t-shirt.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he saw me. I think he looked at me at one point, maybe. I don't know. Martin.
Okay, yeah, Martin Popoff. I'm part of this thing with Marco, and yeah, I guess I'm I've carved out a job as a professional music fan, and I've changed my mind like twice here already, but I'm gonna go with Kick Axe opening for Whitesnake, opening for Quiet Riot in Victoria when I was in, I guess, fourth year university, 1984. Loved Kick Axe. I can't remember if I already knew the band. but I actually saw them in a bar in Victoria as well that year. When I was in Victoria, I was in Victoria 2 years. But yeah, so that was so Quiet Riot was the headliner. This was at the local hockey barn, and Kick Axe is amazing. George Christon, that first album's an absolute classic of nascent pre-hair metal thing. And they were just a really great band from the Canadian prairies, on this Vices album, which was just a classic of Pasha Recording, CBS. They kind of went downhill after that, unfortunately, but that album to me is a 10 out of 10. So I'll go with Kick Axe.
Very cool. My uncle's band Mystique opened for Kick Axe.
Cool.
So that's really cool. And
Nice.
Todd, I got a message from Todd. You said you thought of one.
Yeah, I thought of one. I think it was 1998. It was Dream Theater opening for Emerson, Lake and Palmer, opening for Deep Purple. And
Whoa.
Dream Theater
Wow.
did 30 minutes in front of a black curtain with basically no show. And I need to do some research and see if I can find a set list, because I don't remember what they played off the top.
Wasn't
of
there
my head,
one
but-
song in that set?
One
list?
song.
Yeah, maybe two.
That's
But I
awesome.
remember I was working and I worked nights, and I went on my dinner break. And so I could only see Dream Theater and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and then I had to leave. So I didn't see Deep Purple. And to this day, I've never seen Deep Purple. But yeah, that would definitely have to be my choice. And
Very
sorry for the
cool.
bonus Genesis content.
That's okay. I saw Kevin jumping in and out of the chat. Maybe he's having connection issues, but I'm going to share my screen and we're just going to look at the topic. But I think everybody knows what the topic is. Oh, did I close it? It's okay. The topic today, everybody knows, is name an album that you are contrarian on that you will defend to your last breath. And I know that Todd has an interesting one. So I'm going to do kind of the same order, and I'm going to start with Todd again. So let us know what contrarian album you will defend to your last breath.
Okay, my contrarian album is this one, The Cars, Door to Door.
Interesting.
And
Wow.
Wow.
it's really quite something to say that you like Door to Door better than the first album and Candio. And so, it's whether or not I like them better than those two, I'm not quite sure, but I definitely like them better than all the others. And for those that don't know, Door to Door came out in August 1987, and the Cars broke up in 1988. And it peaked in the USA at number 26 and in Canada at number 19. So it didn't do badly, but it followed up Heartbeat City, which was extremely successul. And the reasons that I like it is because it was produced by Rick Ocasek, and it with additional production by Greg Hawkes. And it was the return of David Robertson actually playing an acoustic drum set and being recorded. So they sound a little bit more like a band than they did on Heartbeat City. I mean, Heartbeat City is a good album, but it sounds like, it was cranked through the Mutt Lange machine. And so, so I like it because of that. It's got a big fat drum sound, almost a hair metal drum sound. And it had 3 underperforming singles, unfortunately. You Are the Girl at number 17, which I will say that I think You Are the Girl is way better than you might think. Very similar song, but way better.
I agree.
Better guitar solo by Ellie Deaston. The second single was Strap Me In, which peaked at number 85 in the US. And the third single was Coming Up You, which peaked at number 74 in the US. I just think there are 2 songs on this album that were songs that the Cars used to play when they first started, and they had only demoed them at that point. And the first one was the first track, Leave or Stay. And the second one was another track called Tata Weo Weo. But Leave or Stay, I think it's my choice for best Cars song. It's got everything. It's got the super thick layered vocals, and it's got a lot of really thick Greg Hawkes keyboard orchestration in it. And there are 2 songs that kind of have power chords, kind of like Magic, Double Trouble and Strap Me In. And I like those songs a lot. The song Fine Line is really a minimalist. And so it's almost kind of more like something Rick Ocasek would do on his own. but I think it works really well. The only thing the only thing I don't like about it is that there are two songs on the second side. That one is called "Coming Up You" and the second song is "Wound Up on You," and they're both good, kind of mellow songs. But it's always bothered me that the titles are so similar, and it almost seems like maybe they should have spread them apart. But my favorite track on that album is a song called "Go Away," and it was co-written with Greg Hawkes. And it's definitely really close to the top of my list of favorite Cars songs. It's a Ben Orr vocal, and it's a great Ben Orr vocal. It's kind of a ballad, but it's kind of a little faster than a ballad. And the interesting thing about it is that it seems like it's primed for a Elliott Easton guitar solo, but it doesn't have one, which I think is kind of cool. And the last song, "Door to Door," is like almost speed metal. And I hesitate to describe it as that, but I just listened to it a couple of hours ago, and it's really, really fast. And so I think that that's, if not the best Cars album, close to it. And I don't think it is the album that should have ended the Cars career. I remember seeing that tour and thinking that it was really amazing because it was this big set. And it was like this 3D thing, and there were all these TV monitors and stuff, and it was really cool. And we saw it in Atlanta to a less than half full arena, and the people that were there were not even paying attention. And I remember looking at my friend and saying, "Nobody's paying attention." And I remember him saying, "I think we're witnessing the end of the Cars." And to this day, I don't understand why. But that's my choice: the Cars, "Door to Door."
That's excellent.
Excellent.
It's a great.
Dying to go hear that record again. Play it again. That's really cool.
Cool.
Did you ever listen to the reunion album in like 2013?
I did, and I think it's pretty good. Yeah.
The only problem with the reunion album, there's no guitar solos on it. It's
You're right.
so bizarre.
That is kind of strange.
And the great thing about the Cars is Elliott Easton.
Yeah.
And the guy's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
just sad there were no solos. on it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool.
Cool. Nick, do you have an album at Nick Esquire? You'll defend your last breath.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not that contrarian on albums in the sense of defending to my last breath. And I know someone is going to, probably the one album that I will defend to my last breath, someone else is going to ably defend, and I will be there to jump in like a street fight. But the one I picked is, maybe a bit in the weeds. Somewhere in my record collection between Motorhead and Mountain is Mott the Hoople. And if you're a Mott the Hoople fan or a fan of that genre, there are two albums in their catalog that usually are considered their best. They have 9 studio albums, and that includes Mott the Hoople, and then they evolved into Mott in 75 and 76 with 2 albums, and then they have a live album. But there's 2 albums that usually get cited, one of which is, and I've got the vinyl. I can't believe I have all their albums on vinyl, but it's this guy, All the Young Dudes. And it's cited mainly because it's got, the big hit, All the Young Dudes and Sweet Jane on it, produced by Bowie, et cetera, et cetera. It's a good album. It's a good starting point if you'd like that music. I don't think it's their best, but it's good. My feeling on All the Young Dudes and thinking about the Contrarians is I like the song, but in using a math formula, All the Young Dudes is to Mott the Hoople like Summertime Girls is to Y&T, or Beth slash I Was Made for Loving You is to Kiss, or even The Flame is the Cheap Trick. So it's good. I like it. I think that they have better songs, and frankly, songs that they wrote, which of course that's a Bowie pen song. But if you like David Bowie, you'd like that album too, because the album sounds like a David Bowie album in production. The other album that's cited as their best, and if you put any stock at Rolling Stone, they have in their top 500 albums. It was ranked once at like 366, another time 370. Their top 500 is out again. I don't know where it stands now, but I found this online. But and this is also a good place to start if you like Mott the Hoople. It's this one. It's the album after All the Young Dudes, and this one's called Mott. There's a different album cover in the UK, so this is our US version. At that point, there were a 4-piece. They had lost their keyboard player, and this album is great. I like it a lot. And it has the hit on it, All the Way from Memphis, which is sort of the quintessential Mott song, and some other songs that I think are some of their best, including I'd like someone maybe who has a psychology background to kind of help me analyze the lyrics behind I Wish I Was Your Mother, but that's one of my favorite Mott songs. It's a fantastic song, and I have another song on here, Driving Sister, fantastic song. But that's a great album, and that's the one that's usually cited. But for me, if I was going to pick the best Mott the Hoople album, and it's a contrarian choice, it would be their Swan Song with Ian Hunter. It would be this one. It's called The Hoople. It was released in '74. And it's good. It's a contrarian choice that never really. It's considered. It's well received. It gets good reviews, but it's never considered their top album. At that point in their career, Mick Ralphs had fled to form Bad Company, and they brought in Ariel Bender. Ariel Bender is a pseudonym, and he used to be. His real name is Luther Grosvenor, and I telegraphed it. He was a guitar player. There he is, right there. Luther was in Spooky Tooth, which would make one of my best underrated bands list. But Luther was a different sound than Mick Ralphs, more bombastic, wild sounding stuff, less sort of bluesy or even country tinge like Mick Ralphs. The other thing about that album I like is I think the secret weapon of it is their new keyboard player that they had brought in at the end of '73. And it was the first time he got to play substantially on vinyl with them, but that's Morgan Fisher. And he's the guy with the funky mustache. Morgan went on to play with Queen, studio guy, but I love the album because throughout it's just bashing keyboard, like in a piano actually, like in the '50s style, more Jerry Lee and Little Richard. Whereas, Mott the Hoople was coming out of these albums where they had their original guy was more like B3 type sound, and where bands in this period were sort of evolving into synthesizers. Here you get an album with it's just bashing piano, and it's fantastic. Hit-wise, in the UK, they had two hits, The Golden Age of Rock and Roll, which is a phenomenal song, and Roll Away the Stone. It didn't do much, I think, in the US, but this was the tour when they headlined for a week on Broadway at the Uris Theater, and it's sort of a famous series of events in that their opener for that tour and also on this Broadway run of a week of shows was Queen. And Mott the Hoople was the only band that Queen ever opened for. So it's kind of a neat trivia thing. But by the end of the tour, Ariel Bender's gone. Mick Ronson comes in, and then shortly thereafter, Ian Hunter has a meltdown and he leaves with Ronson. And then the band evolves into Mott. But I think if you like harder rock, this is the album for you. I think it's their best album. Sometimes Ian Hunter could be criticized. People don't like sort of a Bob Dylan-esque type vocal style. He loses a lot of it on this album, which I think is good. You've got the I think it's their best produced album. I think the sound holds up really well today. Sort of their heaviest sounding album, if you will. But that would be my contrarian choice for their catalog, would be Mott the Hoople's The Hoople.
Nice. Very cool.
I was ready for you to say Mad Shadows is your favorite, because that's one of my favorites.
No.
Very underlooked.
Yeah.
It's good, but
Especially not at all.
I love the cover art on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it
The
is
hair
cool
made
too.
up of faces. That's
Really
a pretty cool
Yeah,
image.
yeah.
Andrew.
Hey, all right. So this was my topic. So if you don't like it, you can always, at me if you want. But so I was thinking, if when you have a contrarian albums, or certainly the way I'm going to describe, in a way, a lot of times you have a contrarian narrative of the band's history in your mind, right? So a band I've always had trouble with is Yes. So when I was 12 or 13, this fantastic album came out, 90125, and I loved it. It was like, it represents the summer for me. I can remember the sound is such a beautiful sounding record. So I went back to listen to the rest of the catalog. Of course, I was a big classic rock fan. I'm like, what's this? This isn't really very good. And so I've tried for 40 years to like them. By the way, this is my second favorite album. I think it's not an entire spoiler alert. So I kind of thought, okay, we all know the story of Yes, their narrative. Okay, so I won't bore you with that, right? We all know what really happened with them. If I try to forget all the critical stuff I ever heard about Yes and just went on what I think about their music, what do I think about it? So I kind of did a little bit like a word association kind of thing. And so, from their prime period, that kind of early 70s, mid 70s, words that came to mind were well, I always kind of thought like there was sort of like the Smart People's, those are long songs like the Smart People's Inagata Davida, You know, it was just sort of like a lot of complicated things, a lot of musical theory, some classical music. Reminds me of like a rock band that you'd hear like at a Renaissance fair if they had a rock band. Something that would be something that came to mind. Great rhythm section, that keyboard sound. Oh my God. So, you know, the worst keyboard sound in the 70s for sure was Wonderful Christmas Time by Wings. It's like a keyboard sound where it's almost like they're trying to like find the right turn of the knob that will annoy you the most, right? Well, Rick Wakeman had like 8 keyboards, and I always felt like he turned like 6 or 7 of them to whatever frequency that I would really be abrasive, and I couldn't stand it, and it's also way up in the mix. You know, the lyrics are mystical, and I'm not really into that. A lot of hippie stuff I'm not really into. But then over time, you know, Relayer, Going for the One, they started to tighten up their sound. The earlier production really sounded, even though it was in the 70s, it sounded like it was sort of 60s kind of production, like not very good production. They started to tighten up their production. Tormato had some good songs on it, little plus minus. Don't Kill the Whale, as corny as it is a great song. That's probably my favorite song from their first 10 years or so. And then, out of nowhere, a masterpiece emerges. Drama.
Great album.
Yeah.
Couldn't
Great
agree
album.
more.
My
Couldn't
favorite
agree
Yes
more.
album.
So
Yes.
good.
So I love like post-punk and some new wave. Like I used to listen to a lot of like Susie and the Banshees, Chameleons, things like that. And when listening to this for this show again, they sound like kind of like third cousins to like Susie and the Banshees. This record does to me, like a lot of the bass sounds, a lot of the keyboard sounds. It's much more accessible. The song's Machine Messiah is phenomenal. It sounds, a lot of it sounds very 70s, kind of mid 70s Pink Floyd to me. Does It Really Happen is my favorite song by Yes ever. One of my favorite songs by anybody ever. The bass line is incredible. Into the Lens, basically a Buggles song. But really great. Run Through the Light, underrated. Tempest Fugit, I mean, the vocoder, the enthusiasm. The videos for these songs are super fun to watch. You got Chris Squire, you know, with his like Randy Macho Man Savage glasses on, getting down. You know, you got Trevor Horn wearing all black with those big sunglasses. It's just like it's kind of like, if I like Genesis, it's like saying if my favorite Genesis album was Trick of the Tail, or my favorite Deep Purple album was Come Taste the Band. It's like the same band, but like better, in my opinion, you know, with this addition of Trevor Horn. And again, his contributions as a producer, a little Jump the Sharky on some tracks. You know, this is second mostly because, you know, City of Love is a terrible song. Hearts is kind of cringy. Some of the production tricks are a little much, but some fantastic songs on that. And then Big Generator was god awful. The title track to that song is one of the most abrasive songs I've ever heard, ever. And then they kind of like float off into classic rock, you know, semi-retirement after that. Not really semi-retirement, but you know, they kind of do their thing. So anyway, for me, the Trevor Horn era, and particularly this album, is just one of a kind masterpiece that outshines everything else they did. So
Nice.
that's my choice.
Very cool. Excellent.
Cool.
Oh, good pick. Wasn't
Thanks.
Yeah, I
expecting
love
it.
that album to death too. I mean, it's almost my second favorite Yes album. I mean, I love Going for the One. I usually cite that, but I play Drama all the time. It's great. Good one.
Very cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Reed.
Sure.
Well, now I wish I was championing Big Generator, but I am not. So I'm a huge fan of Iron Maiden and Bruce Dickinson, but my favorite Bruce album is one that I think it has success in other parts of the world, but in most of the American Bruce Dickinson fans I know put this as his worst album, and that is Skunk Works.
Nice.
I absolutely adore this album, and I'll try and keep it brief, but a real brief history of my interaction with Bruce Dickinson's albums. Like most people, I thought his first album was, I mean, it was a lark. Somebody threw some money at him and said, hey, you want to make a solo album? And of course he said, fine. It sounds exactly like what it is. They did it over a couple of weeks. He said they were drunk the whole time. The songs, there's not much to them. And I still remember to this day his cover of All the Young Dudes. We were talking about Mott the Hoople earlier. I read a review in a magazine where somebody called that track unforgivable. And I thought, wow, what a harsh term. And here's a guy who clearly that song would have been huge when Bruce was a teenager, right? And he does a fine cover of it. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that song, but it's not what people wanted from Bruce Dickinson. And this is the narrative that's going to follow him through his career. So then he gets with Keith Olsen. He does an album that he described as spooky Peter Gabriel-y kind of music, and then scraps the whole thing, doesn't release it, hooks up with Roy Z and Tribe of Gypsies, and he puts out Balls to Picasso. And I think Balls to Picasso, again, sounds like what it is. It's a schizophrenic album from a guy who has money to throw at his own projects and no idea which direction he wants to go. The songs are all over the map. He kept one track from his Keith Olsen sessions, Tears of the Dragon. Everything else is, it's in all kinds of directions. And again, it's not what people want to hear from Bruce Dickinson. And then Tribe of Gypsies, I think they had a shot at their own career, and they left Bruce, and Bruce got in replacement musicians, and they put out Skunkworks, his experimental album, or people often kind of denigrate it as his grunge album. I don't think it's a grungy album at all. It's a very heavy album. Alex Dixon, the guitar player on this album, is not a riffy guitar player. He's much more of an atmospheric guitar player, but there are guitars all over this album. It's not like a keyboard album or something. It's super heavy. For me, it has Bruce's best lyrics. They're very introspective. He goes places that he doesn't go on any of the other albums. And he does something different on this album than any other album I can think of. And that is he emotes. You know, Bruce is a belter. He's got that super powerful voice, but he's not really thought of as an emotional singer. And on this album, you've got tracks like Strange Death in Paradise, where he actually projects some emotion into his voice. You know, some of the songs, I don't know what was going on in the man's life, but some of the songs are just dripping with anger. And then some of them are very strange. And I love those strange lyrics. And again, those are, I think, some of the best lyrics that he's written. So I try to remember the name of the song. I think it's Inner Space. You know, I see the scars of, oh no, now I can't remember it. I'm sorry, middle-aged brain. But too much inactivity and home's a lonely place. You know, I mean, that's a great little line right there. And he never used those types of lyrics in Iron Maiden. And I think that people that had a problem with this album, it's because, again, it's not what they wanted from Bruce Dickinson. What Bruce Dickinson fans wanted was an Iron Maiden album. And Bruce he's putting out all of this other work. And again, I think a fantastic album. It goes nowhere. He was, I think, on tour with Jackal, which talk about a mismatch, Bruce Dickinson and Jackal. And just, he has no commercial success for it. And he thinks about hanging up the towel. And then famously, Roy Z calls him and says, hey, let's make a metal album. And they put out Accident of Birth, which, well, that's the album that everybody wanted Bruce to make. So then you go from Accident of Birth and Chemical Wedding and Tyranny of Souls, and those all could be Iron Maiden albums. And they're very much in that wheelhouse that people expected. But Skunkworks was a departure. It was artistic. It allowed the man to grow and do something different, and people just weren't into it. But I love it.
Nice.
I remember when it came out.
Gonna open a door here. Yeah, keep talking.
I remember when it came out and I saw the album cover and it looked like a Hypnosis album cover artwork. I said, is Bruce going Pink Floyd on us? So I was kind of excited to hear it.
And in a way, he is. I buy into that whole concept, the man looking at himself across space there. That just fits in with the whole introspective mood of the album. I thought that was fantastic. And Skunkworks is a beautiful name.
Did you read Bruce's book?
I did.
Yeah,
I read one of them.
The latest
this
one.
button. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what does this button do? Yes, I read that one.
Yeah, I found it a fascinating read. I like how he the positivity he went through, and he covered all the facets of his career. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and the whole thing about him putting on a concert in Sarajevo during the siege, that's the most astounding story in all of rock and roll, as far as I'm concerned. And even as a Bruce fan, I'd never heard of that. I think somebody's doing a movie on it, or somebody had done a movie on it, but just amazing stuff.
Very interesting.
I'm going to revisit that album though, because I listened to it once when it came out and never went back. I barely got through it the first time.
You know, I had that exact same experience. I literally bought it, listened to it once, put it back on the shelf. And then it was years later that I went back and went, maybe I need to give this another try, and came at it with fresh ears, not expecting Iron Maiden. And I went, wait, this album is brilliant, but you have to, any preconceptions, you just have to leave them at the door and accept it for what it is. Because if you want a Maiden album, that's not it.
Accident of Birth is a Maiden album.
Yes, and I would also argue Accident of Birth is better than Chemical Wedding, although most people put Chemical Wedding as his best album.
Awesome. Thanks, Reed. Grant,
Hey.
I think I have an idea of what you're going to pick.
Well, yeah, I kind of gave it away before in the comments, but in the KISS community, this is very contrarian, because this album is either loved or hated. And I think probably it's more hated. But my choice is Music from the Elder from 1981. I think this album is misunderstood. I think the timing was wrong. Of course, when they released it, at least with the original vinyl, they changed the running order of it. So it kind of screwed it up to some degree. But the CD, the remastered CD that came out, what, 97 or something, fixed that. But anyway, the thing with the Elder, let's put it in perspective. In fact, let's rewrite time for a second. Let's say Destroyer came out. And then let's say the Elder came out right after Destroyer. Now, the Elder, it's a concept album. The 70s had concept albums. I mean, Quadrophenia came out in 73, so this would have been 3 years later. And we have Bob Ezrin back producing. The Elder's not that far off from Destroyer. I know people are gonna freak out, but the production, I mean, we've got choirs, we've got orchestration. If you play Destroyer and then start off with the Elder, it's not that jarring. I think if they would have made the Elder back in 76 and, didn't put out Rock and Roll Over, it might have been a different thing. In fact, I think I read something, from March 2016 Rolling Stone, I think Paul Stanley said that Rock and Roll Over, basically they took the coward's way out. They should have followed it up with something. They should have grown, I think. You've got Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, that they kept progressing upward, I think. And then they went back down, instead of moving on. But I think all the songs are great. Other than Odyssey, I'm not that crazy about, but that was Tony Powers, who wrote Where the Banana Splits, wrote that. So, but Just a Boy, that's one track. It's got Paul's falsetto. If you've heard the new Soul Station record, you'll hear that falsetto the whole album. And it's a good track, powerful. Only You, I think, is like one of the best tracks on the record. Gene's in fine form singing. In fact, I think it's one of the best Gene songs there is. The middle 8 sections killer. Actually, the whole thing kind of reminds me of something from Rush Hemispheres in certain spots, but it's real heavy. Let's see if I can get my notes up. What else? And the other thing, Under a Rose, that's a Gene and Eric track, which is very proggy, great middle section. And it's got one of the best Ace Frehley solos I've ever heard. And his tone, perfect. In fact, if you like Ace Frehley, you should listen to The Elder, because some of Ace's best stuff's on there. After that, Dark Light is an Ace Frehley song. I think that was written with Anton Fig and Gene and Lou Reed. And talk about riffs. That's one of the best Ace songs. Next to Shock Me and Rocket Ride, I think it's right up there. And that's one of the thing about Kiss. I think, well, I'll get to that, but let's see what else. There's so much. I'm trying to get it all. I could go on and on. I'm trying to get it in here fast. Another great track is World Without Heroes, which I think is one of the best songs on there. And I think that song could have easily fit on Destroyer. Great vocal. And another Gene thing. This is like Gene's last hurrah before he became an actor. And he was putting out great stuff. I just think people need to give this album a chance. It's great. Another one, The Oath, with I do believe, didn't The Oath start off the album when it was originally released?
Yeah.
And then they moved it later. But that's another one, Paul singing falsetto again. And I think that's the one song that Paul Stanley's playing both lead and rhythm and Ace is playing bass on. It's kind of got that galloping thing. Sounds like, something from Iron Maiden or something. I don't know. I don't want to keep dragging on, but
I can see
you get
Joe,
the idea. You get
Joe
the
is
idea.
dying
Oh,
to
yeah.
say something.
Well, say something.
Kiss is my gateway band, and Alive just blew my mind. First of all, with The Elder, I'm not a hate or love it. I just like it. I was just happy it wasn't unmasked. When I went into the record store, I didn't even know they were releasing an album, and I looked at this album cover, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And I brought it home. So the original track listing, I believe, started with The Odyssey, but then the records company made them start with The Oath, so it'd be a hard rocker.
Yep.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
like the album. I don't hate it. I hate it Unmasked. I still can't get through it. And then back to, I just want to just briefly, this revisionist history on Destroyer. When we got Alive and we're into Alive and Destroyer came out, we hated or disliked Destroyer because it was not that good. I mean, there's great songs on it. Bob Ezrin overproduced it, and
it's almost Phil Spector-y.
It started tanking in the charts, and then Beth saved it. I'm a much bigger fan of Rock and Roll Over. Right, that's all I'm going to say. But I
remember when I was a kid, Destroyer came out, and we didn't think anything about it. We just played it and thought, man, they sound a lot better. Now they have a drum sound. And we didn't think much about it. When Dynasty came out, we played it and didn't think much about it either. It's a lot. I don't know how you felt about Dynasty. You probably hated that.
Well, Dynasty I lived in Chicago, Disco Demolition. I mean, so it killed Kiss in Chicago.
Yeah.
And then I actually lived in an area of Chicago where there were disco gangs and hard rock guys, and they would literally beat the crap out of each other. So I got my ass kicked one time for wearing a Rush t-shirt. So now my favorite band records a disco song. So all the rock guys hate him, all the disco guys hate him. And I was like, total outcast. That's my experience with Dynasty. So.
We should go.
Anybody got this book here? Odyssey.
Oh yeah, Julian Gill. Yeah,
Julian Gill and Tim McVeigh. Excellent book if you're really into the Elder.
I never heard of it. I'll be darned. Okay.
Julian Gill.
I got my copy right here.
Julian Gill really pissed off Bob Ezrin with that book and Paul Stanley.
We should go Brett and Joshua real quick, and then we should move on in the interest of time. But I saw Brett put your hand up, and then Joshua, you put your hand up.
Yeah, no, I was going to say mine was The Elder as well.
That's funny.
I had a feeling. I was like, somebody's definitely going to choose this. It's a very polarizing album. I've been a fan of Kiss my entire life, and it's one of those albums when you bring up it, people either love it or they hate it. I was looking through this book before, Behind the Mask, and there's a great quote in there when they go through song by song, and Paul Stanley said, "Just a Boy was just a mistake." And then Gene said, "As a Kiss record, I give it a 0. As a very bad Genesis record, I give it a 2.
Well, if it was a big hit, they would have had a totally different opinion.
Exactly.
That's
like
right.
Dynasty.
But
exactly.
I have a very funny story. I got to meet Paul Stanley back in 2007, I think it was, at an art gallery in New Jersey. me and my father had about maybe 10, 15 minutes with him. And I went up to him and I was like, look, I just need to be honest with you. Music from the Elder is probably one of my favorite records. And I swear to God, he put his hand on my shoulder and he goes, well, son, I feel really bad for you.
Funny.
Well,
Yeah.
Sure.
But it's one of those records that I just, I have a great appreciation for as somebody who just likes progressive music, but also just really is into the idea of a concept record, even though the original version was far from a concept record until the remastered version. But even then, it's still so convoluted. And I know in this book, they talk about what the script was that they wanted to do for the movie, and it makes absolutely zero sense.
Joshua, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I also think it's a pretty decent album. I think it's just, Kiss is seen as this band that delivers rock and roll, and I kind of feel like it's kind of similar to Judas Priest doing Nostradamus. It's just, it doesn't sit right maybe with the fan base, though I think music from the Elders actually functions better than Nostradamus, which is an album I have a hard time getting through.
Thank you.
So decent.
Sorry, I see your hand there, Jamie. Do you want to
Yes.
go real quick? Because it's already
Yes,
almost 3 o'clock.
there was way too much love going on for this album, so I got to break this up for a minute here. I always said this about the Elder. It sounds to me like 4 13-year-olds just heard Tommy and they said, we can do this. And they went and tried to record something similar, and it came out with this amateur sounding crappy album. It sounds like Kiss bit off more than they could chew.
you just want Kiss to sound like
there. Enough
Rest
love.
of Kill.
Controversial.
The thing is, though, they'll
comment.
admit that. They'll admit that they bit off more than they can chew.
Leave it on Ezra then.
Yeah.
Bit off more than
Ezra's
they could
great,
chew
though.
would be a fantastic title for a Gene song.
Yeah.
Leave it on Ezra.
I hate to cut this off, but we should move along.
Well, I just want to say that
Ezra.
Ezra's brilliant. He knew what to do with Kiss because Eddie Kramer's very passive. He would just let them do whatever, but at least Ezra was able to mold them into something.
And I agree, to do something with the album. Yeah.
I have to, no, I can't listen to this. That's very contrarian. Eddie Kramer's the best. All right,
We're gonna have to have a whole other conversation on the Elder now.
Not producers right now, but
I love your idea though, Grant, of playing it right after Destroyer. Like that's
But
really
it
kind of
fits.
cool
It
idea.
segues.
Yeah.
It's not as what's the word?
Jarring?
Abrupt, not jarring. You just kind of listen to, oh, it's the next record. Okay.
I'll do that tomorrow.
right.
It works. So I'm going to be interested to see what the comments are on this. It's going to be,
This is going to be the
I
big
might
one,
just
yeah.
cut
that's
it
going to
out,
be the
actually.
big one.
Elder has its
don't
fans.
slag Eddie Kramer. He's
All right.
really
If somebody-
cool album.
If
Eddie
somebody
was
picks
great with Jimmy.
Nostradamus, I'll be amazed.
That would be a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
Matt,
take
you're up
the Elder
next.
over Nostradamus anyway.
And
Next.
I know Matt's got a pick that somebody's already mentioned the band before, so this one's going to be interesting because this is a
Yeah.
different album.
So I'm embarrassed because, like Todd, I picked the Cars to talk about, but I wasn't anywhere nearly as contrarian. But my justification, and Door to Door is very underrated. It's a great album. I almost went with that. I almost went with Panorama. But my justification is that if you pick anything other than this as being their best album, that you're being contrarian, right? People jokingly, including Elliot Easton,
Correct.
call it their greatest hits album is the debut. And so I picked Cameo because it is
record.
my favorite album by the Cars. It's tied for my favorite album, period. It's a
Wow.
tremendous album.
Yeah.
And so the reasons for that, I think the songwriting is as strong as the first album. I like the production a lot better. It's Roy Thomas Baker again. He tones down a little bit the overdubbing. Fantastic, Jamie.
Nice, Jamie. Yeah.
Yeah, so you got the Vargas classic cover. He tones down the backing vocals a bit with the amount of layering that's going on. And it doesn't sound quite as classic rock sounding. It's a little bit more of a modern production. And the way that the keyboards come in, I think, is more modern. So there's this great blend of guitar and keyboards on songs like Night Spots, which is like, it's just a really cool combination. And then the guitar tone. So we talked about Elliot Easton guitar solos, but the rhythm guitars sound great. They're really crunchy. And then the lead tones are fantastic. And so one of the songs that I wanted to highlight is It's All I Can Do. I think that's just a masterpiece. It's really melodic. It's got a great Ben Orr vocal. It kind of presages what will come later with Drive, of having a really melodic hit Ben Orr song, but it's a much better song than Drive. It's got a great Elliot Easton, guitar solo that's really concise, tells a great story, and the guitar tone is really to die for. To me, it's almost like Brad Whitford in Kings and Queens, or like Buck Dharma in The Vigil, the lead tone on it. It's got just this great sound to it. And then Todd, you mentioned with Door to Door, David Robinson on the drums coming back to playing an acoustic kit. And for Candio, the drumming plays a big part in the hooks of some of the songs. So on songs like Candio, on songs like You Can't Hold On Too Long, it's almost the hook to the song are the drums. And I was listening a couple of years ago to the album Head Games by Foreigner, and the drum sound on that, I was going, wow, that really sounds like the drumming on Candio. And I looked it up at the time, and it's Roy Thomas Baker again, and they were both recorded in Cherokee studios in 1979. So in my head, I have no idea if this is true. Like, they just left the kit with the mics all set up. One band came in, the other one left, and just sat in the same kit with everything set up the same way, because it sounds quite a bit alike, even though the drum style is different.
Matt, that drum sound on Head Games is just, I don't know if Roy Thomas Baker's pinning the levels, but it's the drums sound horrible on that album.
Yeah, I don't think it works as well for Foreigner, right? Like it does for the Cars. And
yeah,
playing, right? Even though they've got these fills for the Cars, it's not that busy or anything. No. And he's doing so much more on the hi-hat rather than, kind of playing across the kit. So I think it works a lot better for on Candio.
Same with Journey Infinity. The drum sound is terrible on that too. Really muddy.
So anyways, yeah, so I guess then just the last thing I'll say is that again, Todd, you mentioned Door to Door having that almost speed metal sound, and the Candio album rocks overall, I think, as much as any of their albums do. And I mean, the song got a lot on my head. I mean, it's just a flat out rocker, tons of great lead guitar, and just very heavy. And then the song Candio itself is quite heavy, but it's such a cool transition, right? Because they've got the Suicide influence Shooby-Doo coming before it, which is so modern, right? Like, that's shows where they're going to go with Panorama. And then they've got that vocoder type sound coming in. It's all right, it's all right, it's all right. And then it kicks in so heavy. It's a great hard rock moment by the Cars of all bands. So that's my Contrarian choice.
Wow, very cool.
That's a
I
great
forgot the most important thing.
Awesome. Yeah.
The most important thing about that album, you forgot. The album cover has camel toe.
We'll have to look.
I don't even feel comfortable wearing that shirt in certain areas, or like at the grocery store or something.
Well, it does rhyme with Candio. That was kind of the.
Yeah, you could do it. I think Weird Al tried to do that as a.
Oh my God.
Bottle?
Well, that's the biggest one I've ever seen.
That I agree with that assessment of the drum sounds between Candio and Foreigner Head Games, and it's really weird because on Head Games it really does sound distorted, but it's still so similar to Candio, and somehow on Candio it works better. I've heard people discuss like what's the best remastered version of Head Games, and I saw somebody say one time, you can't save it because there's too much distortion on the drums. But yeah, I do agree that it's a very similar approach.
I don't remember. Oh, go ahead.
A really funny thing happened to me. The reason that I got into the Cars in the first place is that our local rock station, 96 Rock, used to do this thing called the Album Hour. And they would play an album every night at 11 o'clock. And it was always, you know, we would record it. And they were going to play Yes, Fragile. And I was all excited. And I got my tape recorder ready. And the DJ came on and he said, instead of playing Fragile, we're going to play this new album from the Cars because we just got it. And this is the Cars Candio. And I was with a couple of friends and we were so disappointed that they weren't going to play Yes, Fragile. And then within a song and a half, we were all ready to buy that album.
Mhm.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, it's
Great
it's
record.
definitely, if Door to Door is my number one, that's either tied with it or a very close number two.
Very cool. Thanks, Matt. Tim, you're up next.
Well, this ought to be good. It's funny because I sat down and think I never thought I'd have to defend an album that's a diamond album that sold over 12 million copies in the US and whatever. But it's an album that I have called my favorite of all time. So here we go.
Do it.
Oh,
Oh my.
I knew it.
Yep.
Oh, good Lord.
Def Leppard Hysteria. Yeah, I will defend this album. It probably is my favorite album of all time. I would have been, I would have been 13 when this came out, and I didn't like it at first. And like a lot of people, it took a long time to catch on. And I distinctly remember, you know, the first single in the States in North America was Women. Saw that video, didn't really care one way or the other. And then the second single was Animal, and I hated that song. I hated it. And I can't really tell you why I hated that so much, but you guys ever remember in school if there were people that, you know, if you were somebody like me that kind of get picked on or whatever, just people you just didn't like, if they liked some band or whatever, some song, you're like, well, it can't be any good. Those guys like it. As stupid as that may sound. Maybe that was it. I don't know. But anyway, come the spring of 1988, and I don't know why, but I certainly wasn't alone because it was the song that made all the difference. For some reason, Pour Some Sugar on Me was the song. And it was one of those cases where I was swearing up and down to anybody that would listen that I hated this band. And it was one of those cases where I had to say, damn it, I like this band and I got to go admit that I was wrong. And pretty much what I listened to for that summer of 88 was not just Hysteria. It was all four of their albums that they had at the time. But I remember the first time when I bought the Hysteria cassette and put it on, put my headphones on, it was like going on a trip or something with the swirly, flangey sounds that came in. And look, all of the criticisms of this album, I totally understand. You know, Martin famously is given a 0, and, you know, I get it. I get it. I still like it. I like the album tracks a lot, like Run Riot and Gods of War. And it's one of those albums that I can play in my head from start to finish without, I know every little guitar lick and all of it. I don't even know how I ended up with this, but I've even got the sheet music book to it. And I've never even, the only good thing about the sheet music is that it's got the lyrics, because half the time I had no idea what Joe Elliott was saying, but it's a lot of nostalgia. But here's the cool thing, and I'll just keep it short. The cool thing about Def Leppard is that in the spirit of world peace, I think most people can agree, and I do too, On Through the Night and High and Dry are pretty darn good albums. But if you can call a 12 million seller a contrarian choice, that's my contrarian choice, is Hysteria.
nice. Very cool.
I like it. I like it.
Well
You know,
argued.
I was Def Leppard fan from the beginning, and then, you know, you hear about Rick Allen getting into the accident, and then the album comes out finally, and I hear Women. I'm like, all right, this is pretty good. It kind of sounds like Pyromania. And then after that, I was like, oh no, my band's gone. This is not the same band. But one thing that's interesting, Martin, you might know this. Is it true that Mutt Lange, instead of playing like the full chord, they actually played each string and he put the strings together as a chord?
Yes, I remember that whole story.
That
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah, I
about-
remember that
sounds
too.
about right. Yeah.
Cool.
No
That's
wonder
crazy.
that album
But
sucks.
it's a great pick for a contrarian because we're all, you know, hard rock metal guys. And yeah.
I wonder
Yeah,
what those songs.
I knew as soon as I mentioned it, it would be like, oh, all right.
No, that's
Somebody's-
a great one to fight for.
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder
if
what those
anything-
songs would sound like with a High and Dry production.
See,
That's a
I
good
think
question.
Still just as bad.
I think High and Dry is the
Probably.
most overrated Def Leppard album. Every song's the same tempo, it's the same
It's very
key.
contrarian.
I'm like, oh geez, listen to
Has to
one
love it.
song and you've heard the entire album.
One other thing,
1981, right?
Man, I don't know. Let It Go and Mirror Mirror don't sound the same to me at all. I love High and Dry. High and Dry might be my second favorite Def Leppard album. I remember listening to a dubbed copy of that that summer I got from my cousin, and I remember being really excited when I got it on tape because he had the original version that didn't have Me and My Wine on it. And it was right around the time I got into them was when they put out their videotape Historia, which had all their videos on it. It has the old Hello America from Top of the Pops, and I don't know. Look, I just bought into it big time.
We'll
Tim,
go,
just a question. Oh,
Tim,
sorry.
one
Sorry,
more
go ahead,
question.
Andrew.
And anybody out there, is it true that Hysteria is basically Heroes by Bowie and they just reworked it? I've heard that.
It's similar, you know. It's a lot of songs sound like Heroes. They're in D, and then they modulate here and here. And of course, at that time, I wouldn't have known Heroes. But now that you mention that, I'm like, yeah, you could kind of sing one over the other.
Wow.
All right, we'll go Andrew real quick, and then we'll move on to
Yeah.
Howard.
Yeah, real quick, Tim, I'm just curious if since you like Hysteria quite a bit, do you have a more contrarian view of their later catalog, like since Hysteria? Like most people don't like it much, but
So real quick, I was disappointed with Adrenalize. I remember thinking it took them 5 years well, not 5 years, really more like 4 years, and they finished the tour. And they came out with 10 songs, one of which is a re-recorded B-side, Tear It Down. I'm like, this is not worth waiting this long for. If it had come out in 1990, it might have been a different story. I really liked Retroactive, which I know is older songs. I liked some of Slang. I didn't like all of it. Of course, I was well on board with Euphoria when they came back with that. I heard Promises on the radio. I'm like, all right, this is my Def Leppard. Hated X, don't like that one at all. Covers album, whatever. Songs from the Sparkle Lounge, did not like. And I actually quite like the last one that they put out, the self-titled one. So that's been my experience with Def Leppard. But yeah, I would say Hysteria, and then probably High and Dry, then Pyromania, and then probably On Through the Night. I really like On Through the Night too.
Cool. Thanks, Tim. Howard, you're up next. Or would you
Hey,
call Laura?
No, I'm Howard. It's my wife's computer. Yeah. It's all about On Through the Night and High and Dry. Everything after that, yeah, maybe Pyromania. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say my favorite Contrarian album, and then I'm just going to run down other great albums so maybe you guys and other people can find it. So I'm going to say my number one Contrarian album is Gamma 3.
Nice.
With Montrose and Davey Patson. It's, to me, that one electrified me in the 80s, man. It was so amazing. And then after that, Robin Trower's Passion. I have a thing with Davey Patson with him.
Nice.
But then I go with Sabbath, Born Again, and Kiss's Elder. I mean, that Ezrin production was insane. Deep Purple's Burn, yes. Tomatoes and Drum, of course. Zeppelin's Into the Outdoor. Genesis is same title, Genesis. Think very underrated album. From prog songs to pop songs, it worked for me for many years. Still does. Genesis, Foreigner's Head Games. Kansas's Power. Great album. Styx's Cornerstone. Shooting Star. The first star. The first album. Really, if you want a Contrarian, go for that one. Beautiful. Cars Panorama is my next one that's tied for number one. Utopia's Adventures In. Left Bank, Walk Away Renee, Pretty Ballerina.
Great record.
McCartney and Wings is London Town and Back to the Egg. The Beach Boys,
to the Egg.
Surf's Up, and Sunflower and Buckingham Nicks. These are all terrific Contrarian albums to
Great
me.
choices.
Yeah.
I can't choose one more than the other. Maybe Gamma 3 more. But,
Nice. Yeah.
and I'm not a big talker about these things, so forgive me, but I worked on that list for a little bit.
Nice.
And that's what I think. And I hope you guys like it. And
So is
finally-
Gamma 3, Howard, your favorite Gamma album?
You know what? I think so. I really do. I love that album. I just remember it was like new wave was just starting to kind of fade out a little bit, and I love hard rock and metal back in those days. It was like that was 80s, I think, and it was definitely 80s. And I heard this album come on the on I think WNEW in New York, man, and it was just like the keyboards. It was like new wave but rock, and it was such a great formula. I was so disappointed they didn't continue with it. I really thought it could have been something special, but
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Cool.
I
Nice.
loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome list.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Nate.
Thanks for working
Thank
on
you.
that list. Very
Hope
cool.
you guys check it out. I love
Yeah.
this stuff.
Andrew, were you waving your hand around? I don't know. No?
I was just giving big thumbs up
Oh, cool.
to his choices.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Kansas
working on
Power.
that.
I
Sounds
play
like it was a
Gamma
lot of
3
work.
all the time. In fact, I think I'm playing Gamma 3 more than Gamma 2 and Gamma 1 lately.
All right.
Wow.
Write a book. Write a book.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
to
Well,
read it.
it's kind of, I did the Montrose book. And the reason I
Yeah.
did the Montrose book is because I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about all the Gamma stuff. So all the Gamma stuff's in there. So I'm
I
kind
know.
of down on that. But I totally agree with you, Howard, on Davey Pattison. I could just
Right,
listen to that
right.
guy's voice all day.
Yeah, all the
Cool.
time. Did you ever check out Robin Char's Passion?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I
And
loved
I
it.
wish Davey would do even more. And
Yeah.
vocalists are so important in bands that I think Davey, if he was the kind of guy who had the energy to carry on a band, he should just run with Gamma
Seriously.
and just be Gamma, and they should be keeping on making more Gamma albums.
Seriously, man.
Yeah.
I agree.
Very
Great.
cool. We'll
If
go
I could
Nick.
chime in, any Davey Pattison is worth listening to, even his solo work, which is tough to find. And I've had a chance to see him live fronting Trower's band a bunch of times, and that guy is just phenomenal. And another Trower album with Davey Pattison from the early 2000s, Living Out of Time.
Oh
Liv-
yeah.
Living Out of Time live.
Love that one.
Fantastic work with Davey.
Yeah.
He's the best. He's just so great live too. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Howard.
Yeah.
Joe, you're up next.
All right, gentlemen, this is my first time here. I am going all in. My contrarian pick is this album, Skid Row,
Oh,
Subhuman Race. It's not only their best album, it's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Love that
And let
album.
me tell you, I am not a big Skid Row fan. In fact, if Sebastian Bach, by some chance, or Rachel Boland's watching this, I will go down with you. I will take you on because this album is phenomenal. Now, the fact that they disown this album and don't like it make me like Skid Row even less because this is pretty close to perfect. In fact, I call it the 90s Aerosmith rocks. That's how much I love it. Songs like Beat Yourself Blind, Frozen, even the ballad Breaking Down reminds me of Home Tonight, a 90s version of it. I love Bob Rock's production. My history with Skid Row is I hate 18 in Life. I saw them open up for Bon Jovi. I took a girl on a date and it was a really bad experience. I paid big money for scalping tickets for 10 rows. And then Subhuman, Slave to the Grind, I thought was pretty good, but it seemed like that was like monkey business in those songs and just went all out on this album. And I just love it. It's just, it rocks. I love the sound. I love the screams. I love the guitar work. I love everything about it. And it's definitely my top 10 albums of all time. I actually saw him in London by chance. It was 1995 when it was released. And my wife and I went to Paris and London. We took the Channel from Paris to London. And my wife was feeling under the weather. And I walked out and they were playing at the Marquee. And I just got in line and saw him. And it was great. The only thing I didn't like about the show is the British fans got into this spitting thing, which was really gross.
wow.
But this album is fantastic, and I know a lot of Skid Row fans don't like it, and they think they're trying to sound like Metallica or it's like grunge. I don't think this is grunge at all. I just think it's great heavy rock, and I love the production, the insert in it. I love the pictures of the band. It's so cool. They had that and all the writing on there. It's a great album and one of my favorite albums of all time.
Nice, Joe. Yeah, very cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
I'll back you on that one, Joe. I love that album.
Okay, I thought I'd get a lot of backlash here because
So that's an album I got to listen to more. I was way into their first two albums. On their first album, they became my favorite band for a time. They were just the right band at the right time. Slave to the Grind was great. I liked their covers EP. And I bought Subhuman Race when it first came out. I mean, I still have it. And I don't know. I listened to it and I liked, like, what's the song? Into Another. I like that one. My Enemy. You know, I liked some of it. And I remember I've got to listen to it more because I know a lot of people are coming back and saying, hey, you really got to check this album out. Other side note about that album is that I almost saw them on that tour opening for Van Halen.
Wow.
We got there. Me and my buddies got there. There were 6 of us all together. We didn't even know that Skid Row were supposed to be opening for them. We would have been pretty excited about it. We get there, we see all these Skid Row posters with Skid Row's not showing up, canceled. And we got a young Canadian band opening for Van Halen instead called Our Lady Peace. And I'm just going to leave that right there.
I like some of their songs on Lady
Skid Row.
Peace.
Would have much rather seen Skid Row.
You know, so with Slave to the Grind, Monkey Business was a great song, but it was like, it's okay. And then, so I buy this album just because you just buy albums, and then I put it on, and it's like, okay, this song's great. This song's even better. This song's great. And then, yeah, from start to finish, it's just a fantastic album. And then, as I said, I will go out and say it's the 90s Aerosmith rocks, in my opinion.
Nice.
That's
Brett.
a really cool quote. That's awesome. That's a really cool insight on that.
So why didn't the band like that album? Was
I
it
think
because it
it
didn't
do
sell?
well.
It didn't sell. Yeah.
There you go. It's the elder thing.
That's
and then,
right.
and then there's the whole, they broke up. I read Sebastian Bach's book. I was really disappointed in it because he said it wouldn't be like drug stories and sex, rock and roll, and it was sex, rock and roll, stories, same old. But
Well, Eddie Trunk raves about that album on his
Yeah, I
show
know.
all the time. He
then
loves that record.
supposedly they broke up because he wanted to open up for Kiss, which is weird because then they got the new singer and opened up for Kiss on Psycho Resurgence.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it was
reunion, I think.
or the reunion.
Yeah.
They put one of the songs from that was on the soundtrack for the movie Prophecy about the angels.
Breaking
and
it down.
Yeah, it still didn't do any business. And I do think that it's only because it didn't sell that they don't like it. But it's the heaviest thing Skid Row ever did. I think it's fantastic.
It led to their breakup. It was it's a bad time in their collective lives, so they don't look back on it fondly. But I can remember, like, I bought it when it first came out, but a few months later, you saw it everywhere with the chunks taken out of it and deleted and sold for cheap. And it's weird because their last album debuted at #1 and sold 2 million copies. So that just shows you how hostile the climate was for the traditional hard rock and metal in the mid '90s.
My take on the 90s is like Soundgarden. I think the Seattle bands were a throwback to that good 70s hard rock. And I think instead of playing all these alternative bands that all of a sudden alternative radio became, they should have started mixing in albums like this with the Soundgardens and everything. And I think it would have fit in more. But for some reason, it took this weird turn. I don't know. And they started playing all this other garbage in the 90s. And so the Seattle bands, I don't think hurt rock music because I love that. It's just then they started playing all this.
Nirvana killed it. Because I remember the day when I first heard Nirvana and when that hit, it was like overnight.
Right, but they were playing them on the Headbangers Ball and they were mixing it in with other stuff. But I don't know.
Yeah. Skid Row, they didn't want Skid Row anymore. Their timing was poor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brett, did you want to talk about The Elder again, or did you have a backup album?
I had a backup album, but I'll just keep it short. I feel like this is gonna maybe raise some eyebrows, but Seventh Star by Black Sabbath.
Wow, that's a good backup.
Yeah, I love it. Great lineup. I think the songwriting is pretty good. Glenn Hughes sounds great on it. If you've ever heard any of the bootlegs from the tour, it's a completely different story. He sounded absolutely terrible on that tour. But yeah, I would say this would be my backup for my Contrarian pick. And I'm actually
connection there.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's great. You have a great lineup. You have Glenn Hughes on vocals, Eric Singer on drums, Dave Spitz on bass, Jeff Nichols on keyboards. And I'm currently reading Martin's book, Born Again, Black Sabbath in the 80s and 90s. So
Nice. Very cool.
I checked that out earlier today just to try and maybe get some stuff onto it. But yeah, no, I'll just keep it at that.
No, that's cool. Didn't Glenn Hughes have like a really hard time on that tour because he was like an alcoholic?
He did. He
He
had
had his nose broken
yeah.
in a
Coke addict.
fight, and he had a he had like
from
a
what I was
bad
reading, it really
sickness
it's like a story of it depends
Wait,
on who you ask. Like I know the general consensus is that he had a really bad drug habit, but then there's also the story that he broke his nose the night before.
Like
I
beat
think like
up
the
or
tour
something,
started. Yeah, I think he got into a fight with one of their road managers or something like that. But yeah, it's not good. And I think it was by like the 8th tour date they got rid of him. I could be wrong. But he didn't last very long on a tour, and then they brought in Ray Gillen from Badlands.
Yeah, there's a show. I think there's a full show with Glenn Hughes on YouTube. I think it's very easy.
Yeah.
To
I was just
it's like
listening to that
audience
the other day.
recorded.
Yeah,
Doesn't even
there's
look like him. So like, it's
yeah,
this
he's
bloated
very
guy.
big.
Yeah, he's bloated.
Yeah.
There's also there's a bootleg video that you can find on YouTube of them. I believe it's the first night. It's the first night of the tour, and then there's also a couple bootlegs with Ray Gillen, and it's complete night and day in vocal quality and talent.
Right.
Yeah, I
Very
think one
cool.
of them's from Montreal, but I could be wrong about that.
Come again?
I think there's one with Ray Gillen from Montreal.
Yeah, I believe that's the one that I have I
Starts
think I have a
with Mob
bootleg copy of
Rules.
it somewhere. Yes, yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
good pick,
Yeah.
Brett.
Seven
So,
Stars, a fantastic album.
I'm seeing
Joshua.
Glenn Hughes in 6 days. It'll be my first
Nice.
concert after COVID.
Nice.
Awesome.
Dead
I haven't
days.
seen a concert yet. I haven't seen a concert in like 2 years. Joshua,
Yeah, same.
it's a 1:30.
So yeah,
He's
So,
still
yeah.
up.
I should have
He's
let you
still
go
awake.
first.
my first choice originally was going to be Black and Blue by the Rolling Stones. It's actually like my 9th favorite Rolling Stones album, but it's my favorite band of all time. So
Yeah.
I love that album.
I
like,
love Black and Blue
it's
too. Yeah.
it's really interesting
Way
when you
high on
ask
my list.
people about the great album run of the Stones. You know, they always cut it up there. You know, now we can't go to Some Girls because of Black and Blue. I always count it because I love it. But you know, again, it's my 9th favorite, or so it's like not the correct choice. I felt like. Then I went over to Dream Theater for 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, because I feel like with time, my appreciation and love for that album really just ascended. So now I'm like kind of stuck between that and Awake and maybe Scenes from a Memory. But at the end, I still had 2 choices left that I just feel the strongest about. 2 albums that you guys also already discussed on the Contrarians. The one really quickly, Sabotage, by far my favorite Black Sabbath album, my 3rd favorite album of all time actually. But in a way, like I heard Martin especially talk so much about that album already, so it feels like repetitive to talk about that again. So I really want to talk about the other one that you guys also did on the Contrarians, and that's And Justice for All from Metallica. For the longest time, I really was, like most people, stuck between Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, because they are, I feel like, more immediate than And Justice for All in terms of songs and production. But over time, I really felt like, I don't know, there's an album that creeps up on you, and over time, I just got attached to everything, you know. And it is not contrarian in the sense that it's still seen as a part of the classic run of albums, but it is contrarian because it's not, well, you have Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, which are the cut and clear front runners for most people, and here, this, I would say, of the original 4 albums, this one is the one that has the most controversial aspects surrounding it, particularly the production, you know, Jason Newsted, the lack of bass, that's still, it's very infamous. People still discuss it today, and, you know, the production in general gets slagged. The album, the songs often get slagged for being too long, too meandering and repetitive. and honestly, I can see all those criticisms, but for some reason, it all works for me. Like, it's one of those albums where I just don't feel the length of the songs. I eat it all up. I just love it to pieces. Like, and all the songs I have come to really love. I think Blackened might be my favorite opening. On any Metallica album, it's between that, Fight Fire with Fire, and Battery, but I think I like Blackened a little bit more. It has certainly my favorite closer with Dias Eve. I like it by far the most. I really like For Whom the Bell Tolls, not quite as much as most people. I always prefer Orion and To Live Is to Die as far as the instrumental goes. But yeah, and one, as generic as it may sound, is my favorite Metallica album of all. Metallica album. This is my favorite Metallica album. One is my favorite Metallica song. And yeah, I love every song on here. Harvest of Sorrow, Shortest Straw, Eye of the Beholder, The Frayed Ends of Sanity. I love every song on here, and I get the criticisms, and I totally understand that for some people, there's always something that's going to hold this one back for being maybe as great as it could have been if, again, the production, everything went more correct. But to me, it just everything works. It wasn't immediately that everything worked for me with this one, but over time, now I can't choose anything but this as my favorite Metallica album. So yeah,
Well argued. That's really cool. Yeah, nice job. Nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Andrew, I saw your hand up.
Yeah. I was just curious if you had to have one of the two to choose to listen to forever, would it be the Injustice for All album? It sounds like I know the answer, or the Injustice for Jason album.
Well, it's interesting. I have come so attached to the sound of this album that, you know, it sounds like I don't want to say something that makes me look, I don't know, but I don't know if I want to change anything because I'm so attached to the production of this album. Yeah. It's really weird, actually, because you know, I totally get how people just have trouble even listening to this. You know, they just think about the circumstances, and the sound can rub you the wrong way. It's just that for me, that for some reason doesn't apply. So
yeah. Hey, I hear you, and I think, and I really buy, particularly after listening to them talk, that they buried the bass out of sort of a transference of their grief for their loss of their original bassist. I think that's really what it was. And if you see it that way, it's a lot more palatable, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have looked up a lot of things surrounding this. For instance, there's a pretty popular YouTube video with the producer of the album, and he talks about, you know, Lars Ulrich was essentially just wanting to take over the role of the producer, and he couldn't believe what he was doing, and the final product. And of course, there's a video, I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's about an hour long discussion all about Injustice for All. Really cool, but you know, there Lars Ulrich, you know, he says, you know, yeah, it just came out, something like that and everything. And you see Kirk Hammett, and he's just looking at, I mean, he's defending the whole way through Jason Newsted, and sticks up for him. And you just see how he looks at Lars Ulrich. He's just, you're just lying, man. So that's just the hatred in his eyes when he says that just really settles it. And yeah, and James Hetfield is always like, yeah, it's his band, you know, it's Lars. So that's his attitude. So he's like just out at the front. So yeah, but the end result, what can I say? I just love this album. It's probably a top 20 album of all time for me, which is kind of crazy, you know, but yeah.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice
Thanks,
job.
Joshua.
Nice job, Josh.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
very cool.
So we'll go Jamie, and then we'll get Martin to take us home after that with his pick.
All right. Well, I was thinking of going with this as my favorite Triumph album, but I said no. Then I thought maybe going with Mick Jagger's Wandering Spirit and say that it's as good as anything the Rolling Stones did as a band.
Oh,
but
no.
I said no.
Oh boy.
That hurts.
Ah.
Wandering Spirit is really good, though.
Seven.
It is good. Yeah.
I decided to go with this band, the Allman Brothers. And this is their debut. And their classic albums, you know, are loved by critics, loved by fans. And I love them too. I really do. But that was like the heyday right there. And then they did some really crappy music on Arista. I think they did maybe 2 albums on Arista. This is like a best of Arista years. And there's nothing, it should be the worst of, but I don't know, it's pretty bad. I never listened to it. But they did reunite. They got Warren Haynes in the band, like some younger blood. He's a songwriter too. So he kind of put a spark in the band, and they came back in 1990 with this one, 7 Turns and Shades of Two Worlds. And these are decent, solid albums. But looking back, they feel like warm-up albums.
If you pick Allman and
This
Woman.
killer album right here, where it all begins.
Nice.
This is great. And I used to back in 1994, I was listening to Pearl Jam, Smashing Pumpkins, the whole 9 yards, Soundgarden. And when we would hang out and drink beers like 24-year-olds do and smoke pot, we would put this in right into the mix of all that. And it didn't feel out of place at all. But what I like about this album that I think I like it even more than this monster. I'll go as far as that. I always felt that the Allman Brothers, they say Van Halen has a brown sound. I always felt the Allman Brothers had a bit of a brown sound too. And their music is very dense. You sense when you listen to the 70s stuff that there's more than one drummer, but you really gotta pay attention to really hear different drummers. It's going on. It's like a wall of sound. But on this album, I was listening to this hungover in the pool today, and this is what I thought of. Do you remember this experiment when you're about 5 years old? You'd put a little magic marker dot on a paper towel, and then you would dip it in water up to here. And as the water went up, it would separate the black dot. I did it earlier, and the black dot would move up with the water, and then all these different colors from the blackness would come out. Shades of purple, shades of blue. Probably can't see it very well. That's what this is. Their 70s albums, solid but dense. This album breathes, and you see the different nuances that's hidden in the denseness of their music. Did I go too far with that one, you think?
That's awesome.
No, I like it. Very cool.
But All Night Train, right away, the cymbal crashes, more vibrant. The title track, you know, when they jam back in the day in the 70s, I always imagined them jamming like to Jessica with these serious looks on their face, concentrating, because it's complex music. But when they jam for 12 minutes, I think, on the title track, I just imagine them smiling the whole time. There's a joyfulness to this album. And No One Left to Run With, which is my theme song. Some people have theme songs like I Will Survive or Eye of the Tiger. Mine is No One Left to Run With anymore. It's been my theme song for about 20 years. The last 2 minutes, the percussion is in your face. You hear everything going on with all the drums, and you know it ain't one guy. What else do I got in my notes here? Paper Towel did that. That's about it. That's all I got.
I would love it if your notes just said paper towel.
That was awesome. That was really cool.
Listen to this one.
Well, it makes me want to burn some incense. So, all right.
And this is the CD we used to listen to as a teenager or as a 24-year-old. But of course, in these days and ages, you hear it comes out on vinyl and you got to go drop the $35 for the vinyl for some reason. I don't know why I do it.
Nice. Very cool.
Awesome. Thanks,
Very
Jamie.
cool.
That was a wicked pick. Martin, take us home with your pick.
Okay, so today I listened to this right through today and almost picked it, Rainbow Down to Earth, but then I decided, you know what? I went on Guitar Hack with Pete Pardo and you know,
so there.
that whole situation where I'm listening to both their lists on the Thin Lizzy show, and this record did not show up on either of their lists. And I thought, I really have to defend this record. We did an early episode of the Contrarians. The early episodes of the Contrarians are probably the ones where we have like a burning desire to support this album sort of thing, right? And so this was an early episode. There you see the guys on the back. And I will defend this as my favorite Thin Lizzy album. The other ones kind of come up close. It's probably more like Black Roses next. And oddly enough, Chinatown, I play that record a lot as well. But this one reminds me of the whole idea of the idea of a black knuckle or a white knuckle album where everything is against you, a little bit like Black Sabbath Sabotage, where, favor has fallen out for Thin Lizzy. They've got the heroin problems, but they turn in a record where it sounds like they're trying harder than ever, against all odds. They're probably exhausted making this record. I love the production on this. It's so pillowy and analog and high fidelity. But the thing I love about it the most, well, first of all, okay, so it kicks off with Angel of Death, which, I love the idea when you read Thin Lizzy interviews where they talk about how, they kind of put down heavy metal and they're uncomfortable with the idea of being fully heavy metal. And they always were a little ambivalent about this Angel of Death song, but we love them. We love Thin Lizzy doing heavy metal. It's great. We're heavy metal heads. So that's fine. Right. It's almost like being a little prescient of what they were going to come up with on Thunder and Lightning. But what I love about this record the most is the idea of the title track, which is a little bit of that Bonnie Tyler, Betty Davis Eyes, a little riff to that, right? But it's this mellow, pensive, thoughtful, reflective Phil Lynott is on Renegade, and more so, It's Getting Dangerous and No One Told Him. Like those three songs are way up my list of favorite Thin Lizzy songs, and I think they're the thematic, conceptual trunk and heart of this record. Other than that, you've got good, really good, solid heavy metal rockers like Hollywood, The Pressure Will Blow, simple to the point, but just so well crafted and well put together. Leave This Town, which is a little bit of the sugar blues off of Chinatown, right? But also in terms of the mellow songs on it, really, there's nothing that I hate that's just a rote ballad or something that I feel is a throwaway, because I love Fats and I love to death Mexican Blood as well. So these are all unsung songs. Fats is your jazzy song. Mexican Blood is your Tex-Mex, just beautifully well put together song. But these are mellow in the terms that they're not heavy metal, but they're not Sarah. And they're not Still in Love with You and things like that, right? I hate Still in Love with You. I'm one of the there's a contrarian view for you, right? So start to finish, this entire record is just I just love the gold and the red. I mean, basically everything on this record to me sounds like the green and the gold and the red. It's a little bit the way I describe Rush Signals as well. And it just feels to me like the record where it all came together. I don't care that it's Snowy White and it's not John Sykes and it's not Brian Robertson. Don't care. Snowy, he's a little disengaged from the band. I don't care. I love this era of the band, and I just think they put it all together in a contemplative, reflective album that was not terribly heavy, but I didn't need heavy out of Thin Lizzy at this point. So there you go. That's my favorite Thin Lizzy album, and it's absolutely a contrarian choice, underlined and underscored, like I say, by Hack and Pete, not even including them when we did the show on Thin Lizzy in their top 5 lists. So there you go, Thin Lizzy, Renegade.
Joshua, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I love that album. It's definitely a top 5 Thin Lizzy record for me. And I just love that Martin mentioned No One Told Him and It's Getting Dangerous, because I feel like those are songs similar to the vibe that other songs previously created on previous Thin Lizzy albums, but for some reason those songs have much more emotional weight to them, much more impact. I feel like when I listen to Renegade, they are probably 2 of my 10 favorite Thin Lizzy songs.
Yeah.
And yeah, Leave This Town, I could be wrong, but I think Lynette wrote it after visiting a concert from ZZ Top. I could be wrong, but I think, wasn't that something like that?
Yeah, I seem to remember something about that. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely sounds like ZZ Top, and it definitely sounds like Sugar Blues.
But I don't mind it because it's great. So
yeah.
No, I love that album. Yeah.
Joe, I saw your hand up too.
Yeah, absolutely love that album. I became a fan with J.O. Break and bought the albums throughout, but that I would have to say it's my favorite Thin Lizzy album.
Wow, nice, Joe. Thanks.
Yeah, a couple of my friends that were in the metal, we grouped it in with all the new wave of British heavy metal albums, and that was part of our rotation. Definitely love that album. Yeah, cool. I mean I love Thunder and Lightning as well.
I was going to say Thunder and Lightning, and then Renegade for me.
Wow, excellent. Yeah.
Awesome.
My top 2.
Joshua, you got something else to say?
Yeah. No, I just want to say Thin Lizzy is literally the only band where I have like 7 albums that I love the exact same amount.
Yeah.
Like it's really insane, actually. Like I think of other bands that I just can't think of any other where it's quite like that.
Yeah.
Where literally my number 7 could be number 1. Often you say that, you say that and then you think about it. No, not really. But in this case, I swear, like it's really insane. That's why they are pretty high among my favorite bands of all time, because they have such a strong catalog, but especially those upper tier songs, there are just so many that are just on the exact same spot for me. So, and Renegade, you as you say, it never gets much love. It's partially the lineup, I think. People, I remember watching, of course, I'm a big fan of Sea of Tranquility, and his old with Butch Jones was also there when they ranked down the Thin Lizzy records. And they said, we take the original lineup any day over Renegade, and that hurts. that I think many people have that in their head, right? The lineup may, but I also understand the production is maybe a little like it has that eerie quality. I always think of Innuendo from Queen. It's not as extreme, but it has this like this echoey quality a little bit. But I think much more. It works much better here on Renegade. It's not as excessive. Great album, yeah. Enough said.
Nice.
Very cool. Reed, take us home with the final comment.
All right, I just had 2 quick things. One, Snowy White obviously was a big blues guy, so I think he brought in those bluesy influences to Thin Lizzy, and I love my bluesy Thin Lizzy, so that's great. But for some reason, when I think of Thin Lizzy, I always think of, to me, Scott Gorham is like the most underrated guitar player, in the sense that if you ask somebody who's your favorite guitar player in Thin Lizzy, I don't know anybody who says Scott Gorham. They'll say it was Gary Moore. Sometimes they'll say it was Brian Robinson. But poor Scott, nobody ever says that Scott's their favorite guitar player, and he was on all of those albums. So, Scott Gorham, God bless you.
All right, cool. Thanks, Reed. It's almost 9 o'clock Eastern time. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning in Germany. But I think that was a really cool discussion. We're very, very grateful for everybody showing up tonight. And this will go up on YouTube as soon as I get a chance to go somewhere where there's good Wi-Fi. So maybe in the next day or so, this will be up on YouTube. We appreciate everybody showing up. Take a look at the Patreon page in the next few days. I made a couple of changes to the tiers. So the music masters are going to be able to choose the topics that are going to go on the poll. I'm going to use the old poll topics that are still there, but I'm going to let the music masters choose what topics go on next. The aficionados get to vote on the poll with the music masters, and then the lovers get to join our conversations and take part in these Zoom calls as well. So take a look at Patreon, because you're going to see some stuff coming up in the next few days. And thanks everybody for coming tonight, and we'll hope to see you next time. Thanks, everybody. It was
Wicked.
awesome.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Incredible.
Great night.
Everybody.
Thanks, Mark.
Really